G'day everyone, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Code 9. I'm your host Tiffany Cook and I'm an ambassador for the Code 9 Foundation and very, very proud to call myself one. The Code 9 Foundation is doing some amazing work around both raising awareness but also support for those within our first responder community who are navigating the challenges with PTSD, trauma, and just some of the mental health hurdles that come hand in hand with a career in these fields. Today I'm speaking to a very special guest, Alex Prestney. He is the brother of Josh Prestney, one of the 4 police officers lost in Victoria's single deadliest incident, the Eastern Freeway tragedy back in April 2020. We have a beautiful conversation today about loss and grief and trauma and returning to the job. And I just can't thank Alex enough for sharing everything that he did with us in this conversation. And I really think that you guys are going to love listening. And if you do, of course, come along and join us in all of the online communities. We have a Facebook group and a Facebook page and an Instagram, and there is plenty of support and content to hopefully help your journey in whatever you're going through. Alex Prestney, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. How are you? We've had a few IT issues. Look at us go.
Yeah, we got it working now. I'm in a room, just an empty room at work. So, yeah, it's pretty good.
A little bit of quiet time. That's nice to just take some time out from, work and have a chat.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm all about.
Introduced by the wonderful Mark Thomas from the Code 9 Foundation, Sergeant Mark Thomas. You know what? He always brings the most wonderful guests to the show, and I don't mean to drop you in it, but he's spoken very highly of you. So.
Oh, well, I couldn't speak more highly of him either for all the help he's given me and everything along, being thrust into this. It's good to have an ally like Mark, as a friend. I don't consider him a colleague. I consider him a friend as well.
He's a bit like that, isn't he? He's a bit like that.
Yeah. He's got those good tendencies.
Or unless you're just like me who befriends everybody.
Well, these days I am, but I don't really want to be not friends with anyone around, especially here. I like to just, doing what we're doing, I just talk to people. Probably find me incredibly annoying, but I just talk to people. Yeah.
When did you and Mark connect? When and how?
Oh, I think it was probably mid-2020 when he sort of, after the incident of the Eastern Freeway crash, I think it was just in sort of due to association, and he reached out to me saying, this is probably a good thing for you to jump on board with. And it was so good to have an organisation that he put together about trauma, about assistance for emergency services who have been through hell and back, their own versions of hell and back about and he's just been so good with just helping out, just being there for people, for myself, and I can't thank him enough for just bringing me into his community.
Yeah. Okay, so for everyone listening that might be going, what's the Eastern Freeway incident? Do you want to give us a little overview on little reminder?
Yeah. It's so on April 22nd, 2020, it was an incident that saw 4 police officers lose their lives, and one of them was my brother, where a truck that was driven by a driver who was sleep deprived due to drug use and all sorts of things crashed into a group of police officers who were performing a routine check on the freeway for a vehicle that was speeding and of the same sort of offence of being under the influence of drugs. So, one of them was my brother, who was part of the Highway Patrol unit during his training phase, and the other one was for the road policing drug and alcohol sector unit that had pulled the car over in the first instance, and Kevin King and my brother Josh, they were the Highway Patrol unit as backup, and Lynette Taylor and Glen Humphris for the other unit. And unfortunately, on impact, they all lost their lives due to this truck hitting them, driven by someone who shouldn't have been behind the wheel.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking. And as I understand it, your brother was fairly new to the role, is that right?
Yeah, so he graduated in December 2019. And as I said, he was doing his placement on highway patrol. Every recruits and new members do a placement on highway patrol, and that was his. I think it was going to be 1 week or two with another Wading Highway Patrol unit, as that was the catchment area that he was in, and graduated how many months? 5 months. And Glen was even graduated less, Glen Humphris. But Josh was in terms of age, the youngest he was 28 when it happened.
Yeah. And how long have you been involved in the police force?
I'm in my 7th year now. I started in the academy November 2016. So coming up a fair bit of time now, which is strange looking at all the registered numbers that are sort of coming in through the job now. It's like, whoa, I'm old. So I've had a bit of time. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that like to, I mean, we're always having conversations about police officers and all first responders and, getting to peek under the, behind the scenes at what it's really like and what some of you guys are going through, that often until these conversations, us mere mortals out there running amok, we don't think about or realise. But I also imagine there's just a whole new layer of something like that news breaking in front of you. Is it something you ever have an awareness of with your family in the job or yourself?
An awareness in what capacity? I
guess the expectation of a danger like that. Of a trauma that's going to hit so close to home.
It's a bit. I can see it on both ways. For me, I have been a real advocate for things like it's things that people think that are part of the job, but I personally believe that they're just not. Dangers and trauma that we expect as police officers. We all sort of go, yeah, there's dangers in our jobs. There's this sort of thing happens. And I get a lot of the trend and things that I was saying is, the danger and it's part of the job. And I say, I don't believe that it is, because it's just not something that anybody should really consider and really have as part of their mantra to have the potential for death or serious injury as part of their job. It might be something that's a little bit seen as a little bit naive or a little bit heroic, but I consider that and I believe that because there are so many other things that we do this job for. And when trauma affects us and when incidents like there could be incidents like family violence incidents, traffic incidents, a lot of grisly sort of things that we see, and people just go, oh, that's just part of the job. And we go, well, I didn't join the job for that. I joined the job to help people. It's a simple one. I didn't think that I was going to be, and maybe it also knowing of the traumas doesn't, and also being naive to the traumas that could occur to us. Maybe that's how it affects us in different ways. And how it's very difficult to broach them when they do hit us, because it's not something we go and have in the back of our minds every day that trauma is going to hit us and danger could hit us at every term. I never have, and I don't wish that any other police officer goes out thinking that today could be their last shift. We do it for totally other different reasons than that.
What was, I guess, the experience of your family as well? How was it? What came up for yourself and for your family for you continuing to go to work when something like that? Did you have an awareness on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was. So getting back to work after it was a long and deep and thought out process. Very, a lot of things came through and a lot of things, and sort of playing devil's advocate and the positives, the negatives on this happening to my brother, my parents' son and things like that. There was a lot to think about on why, how, when, and where.
Yeah,
there would be the appropriate time to go back to work. But it's always been since Josh passed away about the whole part of going back to work is that I always knew that I was going to go back to work. I always knew that I was going to return to be a police officer because it's not for Josh. I made this career choice and this pathway for myself. I had my own reasons as to why I wanted to be a police officer. And a byproduct of it is now, and a strength of it is now to make Josh proud. It's not the sole reason. It's a partial reason, but I want to do myself proud because this is what I wanted to do. And even though I've had a major setback, it's, it can be career defining. It can be very difficult, but as a family, we spoke a lot about how we're going to do this. I know that it was always like from the very beginning, I knew it, but how were we going to do it? How are we going to get to this stage? How was I going to get to? And there were lots of different times where I would come into the office and sort of figure things out. I'd have a fear of the job. I had a nervousness to the thought of going back to work. I refused blatantly at times to go back to work because I just wasn't ready. And now, luckily, there's been a good transition with treatment that I've sought of it turning onto the positive leaf because I don't know. A lot of I'd say time had a good thing to do with my recovery and also the actual treatment that I received. So those two mixed together created a good recipe for when the time was right. And that was probably in the last sort of 4 to 6 months has been the best time where it's actually, I've been at work 5 days a week with a particular unit, and I'm glad that the timing has been right for this, but definitely soon after it was just we're not even going to think about the future. Right now is focusing on what happened to Josh and how this is going to transpire for the future for me.
It's such a murky thing because I feel like you've got more than one layer of things going on. You've got trauma, but you've also got grief as a separate entity in addition to that. So grief and trauma. And I think both of those things, especially grief is something that I remember someone saying to me once, grief, you don't move through grief. Grief moves through you.
Yeah.
And it is its own beast. So trying to navigate certainty and uncertainty and our normal human nature, and then layering upon that trauma itself, like that, it's huge, I think.
Yeah. It came in different waves and in different times where predominantly it was grief, and it still is. Trauma, I would say, was going to be the one that I'd go, okay, that one's probably going to be the easiest to tackle. That was going to be the easiest one to seek treatment on and things like that. But in terms of grief, I knew from the get-go that this wasn't going to change anything. The grief of losing your brother how old was I? 27, and he was only 28. That was just that took precedent over anything. It wouldn't have mattered whether he was in the job or not, or whether it happened another way. It would have been the exact same, because for me, it was struggling with the fact that he's not here anymore. And throughout my entire life, he always was. So that is what was the most difficult for me. I never thought there'd ever be a time where I relied on my brother for support, but it was the fact that because he's not here anymore, that's what made it so much harder, because I always thought he would be. There's never ever, and probably most people who have siblings and other parents, other family members, where you just think that they're just part of your life, and they're stuck to you like glue. And I think, I don't want to speak for mum and dad as well, but that's probably exactly what they're going through too, with the fact that and it is a totally different grief as well when you lose a child, and I touch wood, I never have to go through that again, but as they did, but it's always just that thought of you don't have what you never thought you would ever lose.
Yeah.
And whether, again, I thought that we think that was just, we always knew that, death is part of life, but one thing that we just struggled to deal with a lot was that and probably a lot of people is when they lose somebody, is how did this happen to us? We didn't, expect this sort of thing to happen. We don't take risks. We don't, we haven't had any close calls or anything like that in the past where, we've been involved in this. It is just your life has taken a sharp 90-degree turn when you never wanted it to and you didn't ever think it would.
What for you was, there's the whole idea of post-traumatic growth, and I just feel like in a situation like yours, like I said, there's so many dynamics to it. What for you did you experience, or did you feel you had a sense of control over?
Nothing. I'll be honest, I had very little control over a lot of things mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, because it all came at once. It all sort of happened in its own way, and it all kind of just hit me at the worst possible times and possible moments. Sometimes I couldn't even see it coming. I would say to describe, it was like I had a different personality programmed into me, and I had no control of dealing with this, or no control of how to. Just had no control over it. It was something that was completely foreign in terms of handling emotions and handling social situations, and handling your own mental health, and things that would be introduced to you over time. They became a little bit more like you could brace for them. You knew that they were coming. But other times it had a really ugly side to it, and a side that I've said to a lot of people when it came to reflection that they would, I'm just so sorry for what became of me at times and what this did. I never ever like to use it as an excuse or as like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this. I would just plainly say, this is what I am. This is what I've got. I'm working on it. I'm trying to. I'm being self-aware about what this is all doing. I'm trying to figure out reasons why, trying to make sense of this all. And I'm trying to get back to what I was. I'm trying to get back to my personality. I'm trying to get back to who I am. And there'll be people who might go, well, we didn't see anything different in you. But that's lucky for them because, I went through a phase where I just had nothing about myself that was I to put in short, and again, I don't want to speak for mum and dad, but I speak about them because of our relationship is that we all lost our identity. We all lost our purpose and identity. And even though people might go, well, how does that happen when you lose a family member? And it's weird. You think that you just go through grief and missing somebody, but you lose a lot of control and identity. And it's scary. It's really difficult to comprehend and even explain.
I find it so interesting. It's like a timely conversation coming back from, the end of the year. And I feel like for everybody, it's been a kind of a crazy grief-ridden year on all sorts of levels. Fortunately for many people, not to the levels you've experienced. You've layered that on top of the COVID chaos. But I feel my sense of this last year is that people kind of getting to the end of the year and collapsing and going, oh, like, hang on a minute, we've all been through something.
Yeah.
with most experiences in life, the ability to step outside of your normal operating system, step outside of life as we know it, can help us get perspective. But when you're in the middle of grief and trauma, you can't hop outside of your mental and emotional experience, and that's what makes this so difficult. Self-awareness, I find, is a really tricky beast in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and especially getting self-awareness. Now, I'm always interested in the trauma and grief conversation, because when we learn something about ourselves and we peel back a layer of self-awareness, which can be really empowering, it can be also really disempowering and becomes an anchor. And I just think for people listening that might be in the middle of their own feelings of grief and trauma, it's really empowering to hear that exists, and that's just a part of it. Yeah. And there's just a part of being, how do we support ourselves in the middle of that? How do we be compassionate to ourselves in the middle of not really knowing who we are or how we are, and not trying to always have control over our behaviour. Like, being aware of it is sometimes enough, and being able to communicate that, yep, sorry, I know I'm being like this, and it is my aim to do better, but leaving it there, because sometimes that's where we're at.
Yeah, like you said, exactly, with it being disadvantageous, because you might consider it, and other people might go, yeah, it's fantastic that you're aware of it, but then on the other hand, the response could be, yeah, but it's not a good thing still not what I like. But it's sort of, you have this seesawing of opinions about it, where it's like, yeah, I know I'm self-aware, but it's still not having the best outcome. That's where you said it can be a bit of an anchor for you. It doesn't fix things. It's just great. Yep, I'm self-aware. But at the same time, that helps you with your development on how to do better. Not fix it, but just do better.
Yeah, yeah. I think about it like boxing training, like I can't learn how to slip a punch until I box, by the way, just in case you think this is a weird analogy.
No.
But, I cannot learn how to slip a punch and counter a punch without wearing a lot of punches, and so it's the aware, it's that learning process of being in the middle of something and going, oh, right now I'm being a bit of a loser.
Yeah. We
that's
have,
okay.
we liken a lot of our mental battles to sport, because we do sport as well, triathlon, long distance running and things like that. And sometimes we go, look, in terms of, say you might be training and you're trying so hard, you go, why aren't I getting quicker? Why aren't I feeling stronger? And you might just go, well, that is just all I've got. That is just where I have to leave it. This is, if I can't force my mind to fix itself, I can't also do that to my body. A mind has its own capacity as well. You can't, as much spiritual thinking, reflecting, divulging into things, there becomes a time where you just can't fit anything else in. And that's where you've got to just sort of let your body and your mind just do its thing, because it has a capacity, and that's what we have all discovered a lot of, and that has been helpful, both physically and mentally, in terms of our physical sort of fitness and things like that, but also in a mental capacity. Sometimes we are what we are at the moment. We want to do better, but we can't force ourselves to.
I love that. Little birdie tells me you're somewhat musical, Alex. You're somewhat talented.
Just a little bit. Musical. I'm not gonna. No, I'm very bashful and shy when it comes to people going, sort of thing. So I do. I love music. Music as well. I keep sort of harping on about how we are as a family. It makes us like we're the Brady Bunch or something. But as a family, we have always been musical, just sort of, not in the way that I expect people to think that we just pick up instruments and sort of play things. We are musical in the way that I think ever since me and Josh were kids, mum and dad introduced us to music. Our whole family is, and further generations is musical. And also it's what is keeping us connected. One of the things that is strongly keeping us connected to Josh. Josh was an absolutely incredible guitarist and musician. And I've said this a few times where he started playing the guitar, I think when he was in grade 6. Wanted someone to play with, so I took up the drums. And, yeah, ever since then it's just been, we played, bands together, jammed together, and then, but to form a band with your brother, it can be difficult, especially with our contrasting personalities. Over time, we sort of just formed a good alliance and a good understanding as a whole with music, and that's how we connect. And I had somebody ask me the other day, what are your triggers? What do you have any triggers and things like that? I think it was about PTSD and that sort of thing. And do you have any triggers? I think they were expecting the answer to be something relating, but I said, music actually is a trigger. And she was like, what do you mean by that? And I said, songs. And it's, I'd say auditory sort of things like music is a trigger, but not in a bad way. It sort of, I might hear something by Stone Temple Pilots or Silverchair or the Whitlams or those sort of things that were Josh, and you knew, and it took you back to a time when we might have been listening to that music. And that's all it was. It was those simple things that were just so special, bittersweet, but also special because they just reminded you of that. And one thing that we don't shy away from is music. There's a lot of things that I would never, ever want to for that sort of thing that was so important to us to be something that we could never do anymore. Like to say, for example, I could never play the drums anymore. I could never sing anymore. I could never do what I loved, which is what it was. And so what I did is that I learned how to play the guitar. I learned how to write music. I learned how to do all this sort of stuff because it gave me a sense of empowerment that, one, I was achieving a goal, which was learning something, learning something very important. Obviously, nowhere near the skill level of what Josh had, because he had almost a decade's worth of, or perhaps more than a decade's worth of playing the guitar. But I just, as well, I was like, well, let's do something. Let's write music. Let's write for Josh. Let's write stuff that I enjoy. And I've released songs that I've put on Spotify and that are just, and I've said this to like a lot of, friends and people who have helped me with the music. And it was like, with music, how do you make this, an absolute masterpiece? Because that's what you want when it comes to your musicianship and how you write and play. You want to be the absolute best that you can. You want to write the most powerful lyrics. You want the most powerful song possible. But at the time, it was all that we had, and it was in my mind. And what I wrote lyric-wise was what I was feeling about this whole thing. And it's been well received, and I'm very appreciative of everybody who's listened to it and everybody who's gotten on board. And I've gotten things. People have said, "Oh, I've added all these songs to my playlist," and I'm like, "Oh, wow, thanks!" Like it's so humbling, and it feels so good that people are supportive of that, of what I'm doing, and with music and this sort of thing. And so I've always continued to just do better and to learn more things and just use it as something that's just a really, really strong connection between us.
Yeah, music is quite incredible in that way, isn't it? It takes you back to moments, but I just also feel like, especially in your position right now, it would be so deeply cathartic to be able to.
Yes.
I just think of the idea of expression and expressing and speaking and feeling heard. And I think that whether we are writing music, playing music, listening to music, we are doing that. So I feel like it's a therapeutic thing, when you can hear a song and align it with something you are going through, you feel heard. When you can sing the lyrics in the shower, you feel like you've spoken, and that in itself is quite incredible.
That's it. It's just, and I've always had that thought about music. I like to, like you said, you feel music. And as well, when you put music together, you want to make sure that it's just. I would do things like when I'd be writing music or just thinking of things, I'd go, nah, it's not hitting me hard enough. I've got to find something that's really what I'm trying to get out here. Or, when you listen to things, you might put on your emo playlist because that's just what you want to do at the time, or your metal playlist or your lo-fi playlist for whatever reason. Music can just seriously give you everything you need, whether you're constructing it or listening to it. It can be something but like you said, you feel heard, you feel it's calming, for me especially.
It's so funny. I was listening this morning as I was driving back here. I was listening to an album, and it was one of the first albums I ever got. And I looked at the year. I was like, I wonder what year that was released and how many more albums this artist has released since. Quite a few, because it was 1995, because she got one out in 1995 and I think 1998, and I listened to those two all of the time. And I feel my mind go back to life back then, and I visualize things, and it fills me with feelings and memories. And I've gotten stuck in that world of music I'm that person. I rarely look for new music. I cling to this old stuff, and it's just that emotional attachment that we have.
Yep, absolutely.
But I guess it's kind of made me question recently, I wonder what, let's look at life now and then and before then and after then, and why that music? I want to know what was going on in that time of my life that maybe I'm attached to, that's not just the album. Maybe it's something else. Yeah,
it's something that album or that time of listening to that artist, because you didn't really know it, but it just sort of, it created this core memory for you. And that's why I do the same when it comes to a lot of things. I would say, and it's probably for a lot of people my age, when you go back to the emo era of and punk rock and that sort of stuff, is because maybe you might have been a brooding teenager. You were really going through a part of your life that you were really trying to get through, and really trying to that for me is I have other things rather than things that remind me of Josh. I had the exact same thing. I take myself back to eras with music that I found I would go, say for my parents and other people, 1985 probably would be the best era of music ever, hands down, in mankind, man and womankind. It would be the best era of music. But then for my generation, it would be that era that we love and we hold on to because of some sort of connection that it gave us. And for me, it was pretty strong.
Tell me your top 2 or 3 1985 songs.
Oh, I don't know the specific sort of years, but I'd say out of the whole of the 80s, it would have to be anything Van Halen, Dreams by Van Halen. I know that, and a lot of this stuff is because of Mum and Dad. Anything Kiss, all the stuff that I know of because of Mum and Dad. Groups like Go West, Duran Duran, all those sorts of Michael Jackson, Huey Lewis and the News, all that sort of stuff is stuff that we just all know. And if we were listening to it around, I don't know, just together outside having a beer, we know all the words. But that's just because we just know the music off by heart.
Yes.
And all that sort of stuff. That's just part of our. But then in today's era, it would be the bands like Green Day. Green Day was one of the very first bands that I think Josh saw for the first year. It was the first band that he ever saw live. Same with me, and then rolled on to just discovering and this sort of journey of discovery with music that Josh had, and he'll probably say, and it's true that I followed. I didn't, a lot of influence that I had was because of Josh. But then there came a time where we sort of went our separate ways about how we interact with music. There were some times where he would go, why, they're no good, or why would you listen to them when he's got his own style? And I'd be like, we just have opposing opinions, Josh. There are things that we both love, but now we're branching out differently.
My brother's 7 years older, and my parents listen to country music, so I used to get the flack for that. Because I think my first cassette, like, don't tell anyone because no one's listening to this.
No one's listening. No.
Don't tell anyone, but it was James Blundell. It was a cassette. And when I bought it, I took it back to my sister-in-law, and she was like, that's what you picked. She's like, no, we've got to go and change that. And I thought I was really cool. I thought that was a cool choice. I'm like, I've got this cool cassette. And she's like, no, mate, that's not cool. But his music, so he was 7 years older, and I still listen to all, like, R.E.M., Tom Petty, Cat Stevens, and I just love that music. So I just will go out and seek out albums that I remember seeing in his room. It's quite ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, for me as well. Like, there are times where I never thought that I'd be, the music that was on Josh's playlists and things like that. Now they're on mine, and I go, oh, is it just because he's not here anymore? But then it's not. I'm not listening to them because I love them. I'm not listening to the Goo Goo Dolls because I'm a massive Goo Goo Dolls fan. It's because I'm a massive fan that he was a fan. I'm a massive fan of the Stone Temple Pilots, Soundgarden, and those, and the 90s grunge scene of music as well, and alternative music. I'm not a fan of them. I'm a fan of Josh and his style because it creates contrast between my style as well. And it makes me sort of go, if people will go, oh, geez, I didn't know you were a fan of this. And I go, not really, but my brother listened to them, so I'm going to, in a way, see what all the fuss was about, and to keep playing it in a way that it's like a bit of a shout out, and a bit of a going, yep, I'm still spinning it for you.
Yeah. If I'm playing it, he can hear it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's still got his playlists on Spotify that, Dad listens to, and in a way it's so bittersweet because on his playlists and listen things like that, he's got playlists named Dad and camping and things like that. And
I've got goosebumps all over my body right now.
Yeah, Dad 1, 2, camping 1 and 2, and those sorts of things, and he'd have one called Home and things like that. That he just never put them together for sentimental reasons like that. He made them because I'll put these songs together because it's good for me and Dad to listen to, or good to have at home, or good to listen to while we're camping. And we still play them because sometimes we go, there are times, we go, nah, or that's really difficult. And one thing that I observe a lot is when, I can't remember the band, 1927, that's when I think of you, and Father's Day. I can't remember who it's by, but they're the ones that are really like, they're not sad songs, but it's just like, nah, that one's a bit too difficult. We're going to skip that one because we still have, they do still, the knife still does twist a little bit when, they might come on. So, yeah.
When you lose someone that close to you, and this will be different for everybody, and only if you're comfortable sharing, but where do they go for you? Or like, where do you find them?
Everywhere, and that sounds so cliche, but I find him, and I feel him a lot, and I feel him very close, and I think that is in a way is that because he never wanted to leave. There is a version of what I like to call, if you call it heaven, but there is a version and a place where there is a place where he is. He comes and goes. as well, is what I found. He comes and goes when it suits. And early on, it was very prominent. And I saw him in and heard him in, and I still do, in the rain. And that was his version of how to make noise, not music. It was almost like he was making whatever noise he could make. And I still do. And sometimes we'll go, we might be out for a run. It's been a beautiful sunny day and it starts raining and we'll go, thanks, Josh. Like, and because he was an absolute, he stirred everybody and he always thought he was just hilarious. Whenever there were times where something might, I don't know, happen that was like, it seems like a bit of a stitch up, something like that, we might go, that was Josh doing that for sure. Of course that was, Josh playing a trick or Josh doing this. And yeah, it might have just been coincidental, but then there are some times that you would go, it brings you comfort to know that he's doing that sort of stuff because, you can't take that away from anybody as well. And luckily there's never been anybody who goes, oh, come on, it's just a coincidence. That's not true. You can't take it away from anybody. If anybody feels somebody's presence around them, it's so special. And again, we never thought that we'd ever have that sort of experience and that sort of feeling about, going, oh, wow, that's new, or that's something that's different. There might be times where I would think about Josh more often than not. There might be days where I go, oh, geez, and I said the other day, geez, he's been on my mind a bit, not in a way that of sadness. It's just been, I've just been thinking about him a bit lately and just sort of, what he's doing, what he's up to. But yeah, there's this, in terms of where do they go, or I won't say they, I'll say Josh hasn't gone anywhere. It was what we sort of made a discovery was that, yeah, his body and his physical being may no longer be with us, but we learn how to live with them in an invisible way, in a different aspect, in this non-physical form. And there might be some people who just don't want to do that. It's incredibly hard for someone like my dad. That's been incredibly, incredibly hard because, like him and a lot of other people, might be I don't want to have to do that. Why should I have to do that? Why do I have to live with this now when it's not as simple as that? The simple thing is that he was here and now he's not. So why am I having to make this decision now to go work out how to live with him when he's not here? But to put it into the simple terms, I think that he's everywhere. And that's cliche, but it's true in how I feel.
Do you feel like, and I even find it hard to word the question, do you feel like because of what's happened, you are almost in a sense more connected, or are there positives that you can draw out of, or are there things that you deeply appreciate that you realise you never would have had the ability to appreciate before?
Some things. Luckily, we had such a strong relationship between the two of us and as a family. So I would say in terms of, I would never think that, I wish I did this, or I wish that, I appreciated this more. But I would say in terms of appreciating his form and what that form is now, and what in a way giving him his strength, even though he's not here, and talking about him like he is here, like he's in the next room, talking to people about him like he is here, keeping his memory alive. That's what I have found an appreciation for, because as hard as it was to have to do that, we owe that to him because he never wanted to leave. And yeah, I would definitely just say that has been something that has kept us positive and given us an appreciation for, because we knew what he was like as as a person. We knew him, and we didn't have any regrets or anything like that. There wasn't that sort of thing going, oh, well, I wish that I was to do this and now I can't appreciate this anymore. It was in a way that our knowledge and our cup was full about who he was. But I would say, yeah, just making sure that, especially because it was on duty as a police officer, it was to appreciate the fact that it wasn't just a police officer who's died. It's a person. It's a brother. It's a son. It was a boyfriend, a friend, and that's what I'm trying to make sure to always keep at the forefront. It wasn't number one as a police officer. That was number 5 or 6. It was everything else leading up to that. So I've learned how to appreciate that.
What was the best, when you reflect back, the best thing that somebody around you did or said in a moment where you realised, oh, that's just what I needed, and it's not, like I just think of, we don't know what to say when somebody's suffered what you've suffered in terms of grief and loss, and what helped you that might surprise people?
Encouragement.
Yeah. Just
encouragement. And like what we always say, action speaking louder than words. There was a lot of when you found someone that you could align to strongly, like Mark. Someone like Mark is always going to be there. He's always going to, grab on at the other end if you need. And so the things that stick with you are people like that, people in this job and in people in this life, your friends, family. And over the time, you sort of, not in a bad way or in a vitriolic sort of way, is that you learn a lot very quickly. I learn a lot about appreciation and legitimate appreciation you have for legitimate people. And that's not to say that, there's people who, who never follow through in terms of if you needed help and things like that. But the ones who actually, without needing to put your hand up and say, I need help, the ones that will just ask how you're going out of nowhere after long periods of time, people who will include you in things, people who will encourage you just say, you're doing such a good job, because I've never known what sort of job I'm doing and how I am going on the outside. I've never sort of thought, but I have always thought, geez, am I doing this right? How do people see me? Yeah. And it's such a difficult thing. It's like you want to ask people, or ask your closest people to go, am I doing okay? How do I look? Does this look big on me? Does this look scary? Or what am I supposed to do? So when you get those people who give you the encouragement that you want, because for me, specifically, that has been something that I've needed, and I'll be honest, I need that thumbs up and that pat on the back to go, you've done well. You have done well, if I have. But just to say, and if I'm trying, just to say, for people to say, everything's okay. That would be the one thing that I would say for, anybody who's going through a similar situation, because there are so many people who are, it is okay to fall in a heap, and it is okay just to break down, and it is okay to not have a purpose, but at the same time, a little bit of work does need to be done on our end, and it's to find those people who will always be there for you, because they are there, and but to grapple for where they are is sometimes very difficult.
Yeah. I had a good friend of mine right before Christmas, suddenly lost his son. And earlier in the year, I lost my dog, which that was the biggest exposure to grief that I'd experienced or that I could remember experiencing. And I remember the second day after, one of my friends, Charlie, one of my PT clients, messaged me at 7 a.m. and said, "You're doing really good. Now hop up and go for a walk for Coachy. Coachy's my dog." And I remember in that moment I read it and went, how does he know? And I got up and I went for this purposeful walk. And every single day after my friend before Christmas lost his son, every day I just thought, what can I say to you that's going to have that effect? And I just, I'd done episodes on my show on grief with grief experts around the world because I was like, well, okay, this is a weird thing. Let's figure out what's going on with humans when we suffer loss. But still, after all of that, I still just felt at this loss of what do I say to him? Like, Tim's not a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone's listening, thinking the same. They're listening and maybe they know someone that's lost somebody and they're thinking, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to be there.
That is totally fair enough. No one's it's funny when you said grief expert and go, how is anybody an expert on grief? I would say it's somebody who just knows the process and knows the basics, the 101s on grief. But there are so many things that you could go to a grief expert and they go, "Whoa, I haven't experienced that before," but I get it at the same time. And I had the same sort of thing where people who were dealt with the incident and they felt like they couldn't come to me. They couldn't or people who were affected by the loss of Josh, like my friends and his friends and things like that, where they would go, "I shouldn't come to you, should I?" And I'd go, "No, please do." Yeah. Because whether we know it or not, it might bring us closer. It might bring us together here. It might make you feel better and the same with someone like my mum as well, where after a while it got a little bit tedious when it came to we're not helping people who were dealing with the loss of Josh, but we were connecting with them because it helped us too. And my people's automatic reaction was, "Oh, no, I can't. Nah, it's not for me to come and tell you how upset I am." Obviously, if you go about it tactfully, then yes, it's okay. But if there are people who there were people who sort of came and were sort of emotional dumped on us, and that was sort of like, it compounded things. But when it came to when we were really just people who wanted to talk about it and really get across that they were affected by it, it was difficult to, and even to this day, when I talk about Josh, people, they don't know what to say. If I were to talk about Josh or make a joke about Josh, it's a bit of nervous laughter or a bit of, don't say anything to cross a line or joke back or you might get upset. It's like, I'm the only one who can say anything or talk about it. I want other people to talk about him and say how they're feeling about it, because it gives him his dignity back, that there are people who are mourning him and who are missing him and who were important to him. And that's what I want. I want there to be all these people and this large community of people who are affected by it in the weirdest way possible. You don't want this big sort of community of mourning, but you want there to be people who meant a lot to him and vice versa. And to me, that's special. But for a lot of people, it's very hard to sort of approach that properly.
Yeah. For everyone listening that wants to go and check out some of this music that you've written about him, how do we find it?
It's on Spotify or Apple Music, YouTube. It's sort of, anyway, if you just type my name into any of these sort of things, it should come up. There are 3 tracks there, all different. The one of them is written, solely about Josh and this initial process. The second was about how to deal with it's kind of like, it was kind of like admitting that there's something going on, there's something wrong with me, there's something that I'm struggling, but it's okay. That's probably what I broached on about having those people around you. It's I sat forever trying to come up with a track title and talking to James, my producer, on it about, and he said, don't worry, it will come to you. And I was trying to force it and just write down all this sort of stuff and random word generator, and that just wasn't working. And then one day it came to me, and the words "as long as you're there" came, and it's not said in the song. As long as you're there was about as long as someone is there. That's all I need, no matter what I'm going through, whatever difficult phase. It could be something, someone, somewhere. As long as that is there for me, then we're going to be okay. And the third one was about a bit of impatience, a bit of about, everything that's going on. Why is it still going on? It's called Wait for the Day, and it is simply as that, waiting for this to fix itself, waiting for this sort of, trying to be impatient about it, trying to fight this, trying to make sense of it all, and knowing that there will be an end to this, but right now it's pretty frustrating. So, yeah.
I love that. We might put the links to all of those in the show notes so everyone can go and listen to them on repeat. I will be. Oh. I think it might be me. It might be my this next decade of obsessive listening will be those tracks. I do tend to put things on repeat and just ride it out for decades at a time. So,
well, if you could do it, that'd be great.
Alex Prestney, it has been such a wonderful pleasure speaking to you, and I thank you for sharing everything that you've been through and for everything that you do. It's really amazing, and our listeners will love you. So thank you. And hey, everyone, thanks for tuning in again.
Thank you. Yes, thanks very much for having me, Tiff. I really appreciate the opportunity.